This is going to be a insane question period. Yesterday was absurd. Today is going to be wild. Also, can somebody remind me in the chat that tomorrow is my wedding anniversary? I have it written down. I'm supposed to get a cake. I need a reminder in the chat, okay? By the end of the stream. I just need a reminder. That's it. Likely I'll be reminded myself, but can somebody get my back? All right. Let's switch screens and get into this. Also, thank you to everybody who did purchase the I Did Not See That Coming stickers. We are almost sold out. It's absolutely insane. We almost sold out twice. I might have to get more because they're just extremely popular. But if you want one, the link is down in the description, as well as the pinned comment of the live stream. And that's what it looks like. I did not see that coming. They're selling out, so get them before they are all sold out twice or 3 times over. All right. Here we go.
Urban Farm, which aims to help eliminate food insecurity by giving people space to grow their own fresh food. As we enter the season of giving and goodwill, I want to thank the Flemington Park Ministry for their service to community, their dedication to fighting food insecurity, to all the volunteers who have continued to work hard to provide services, foster connection, and nurture hope.
Reminder to drop a like on the stream too, folks.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
As we approach Thanksgiving, I'm mindful of what and who I'm thankful for, like my wife Amanda and our children, Luke, Emma, Michaela, James, and Nathan, like my friends who are joining me on the Hill today, Matt Grills and Kyle McDonald. And as Canadians gather to give thanks for the blessings in their lives, it's important that we not lose sight of our neighbors who have had hard times forced upon them. With this NDP Liberal government, it's gotten to the point where 7 million Canadians aren't sure how they're going to be able to feed themselves. That's the result of taxing the farmer who grows the food, taxing the trucker who moves the food, and taxing the Canadian who buys the food. Canadians are resilient, but they're losing hope. That's why a Conservative government will restore with the common sense of the common people. We're going to axe the carbon tax, and we're going to allow Canadians to bring home powerful paychecks. The great Canadian comeback is coming. Let's bring it home.
Bring it home, yes.
The Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is with great sadness that I rise in the House today to share the tragic passing of a great supporter of the Liberal Party and a truly great Canadian, Ernie Lustig. Ernie was the riding president of Humber River Black Creek since 1999. His contribution to the community and to my family and I was much appreciated. He was a passionate man committed to his family and his country. Our deepest condolences to his son Joel and daughter-in-law Fern, daughter Ellen and son-in-law Jerry, his grandchildren Lauren, David, Josh, and Aubrey, and his 2 great-grandchildren Drew and Chloe. Ernie was predeceased by his wife of 70 years, Sharon Lustig, our First Lady, as we called her all the time. Ernie Lustig will always be remembered as a smart, generous, dedicated man that was truly one of a kind, and it was an honor to have been his friend. Rest in peace, my dear friend.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi James Bay, Nunavik AU.
Règlement, c'est dans leur propre chaise.
Yeah, he talks like a pawn shop or whatever they're called, an auctioneer.
B2B.
What the hell is he saying? Holy smokes.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, Le Château de Marie-Ève welcomed its first tenants in downtown Val-d'Or. The name pays tribute to Marie-Ève Charon, a well-known homeless woman who was tragically murdered in 2016. The project, headed up by La Piole, aims to put a roof over the heads of 41 people at risk of homelessness. Each new tenant shares their needs, and an appeal is made to the public for donations. I encourage the public to donate tables, chairs, beds, and appliances. The marked increase in homelessness in our cities is worrisome. Every level of government is trying to find solutions. But as Stéphane Grenier, president of La Piole Shelter, says, no matter how much money we invest in homelessness, we'll keep going in circles as long as we don't have housing to offer them. In closing, I'd like to underline the remarkable work of La Piole and congratulate the entire team on this wonderful initiative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Argenteuil, La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The town of Namur in the Outaouais region shares a special bond with its namesake in Belgium. On August 26th, I had the privilege of attending the welcome dinner orchestrated by Mayor Gilbert Dardel and the whole team from the regional municipality of Papineau in honor of our valued Belgian guests. In return, last week, a 26-strong delegation from Papineau, led by the Reeve Benoit Lauzon, was received by Maxime Prévost, Mayor of Namur, and member of the Belgian Federal Parliament. Since 2015, these municipal exchanges have been emblematic of the cooperation and friendship Canada cultivates with other nations of the world. To our Belgian friends, it was an honor to welcome you once again to our magnificent region. We hope your visit was as valuable as the friendship shared by the two Namurs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
The job of a federal government, first and foremost, is to protect Canadian interests. Once again, farmers are paying the price for this Prime Minister's failures on the world stage. The Liberals are trying to fast-track the United Kingdom's accession to the CPTPP, ignoring devastating
tongue twister, eh?
for beef and pork producers. The numbers are staggering. Last year, the United Kingdom imported more than 4,000 tons of beef worth $33 million into Canada. By contrast, Canadian beef exports to the United Kingdom, zero. And it's a similar trajectory for our pork producers. Whether it's beef and pork or peas and pulses, our producers are losing valuable market access because of the failures of this Prime Minister.
That's right.
For Conservatives, we believe in free and fair trade that benefits our allies and our producers. As Conservatives, we will succeed where the Liberals have failed. When it comes to trade negotiations, we'll show strength. We'll focus on economic opportunities. We'll defend our producers and our world-class standards. Conservatives will restore Canada's reputation as a trusted and tried economic and trading partner around the world. Conservatives will bring it home.
Let's try and get up to 500 likes, everybody, before question period starts. Just a reminder to hit that like button.
Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, we commemorate the thousands of children who were stolen at the hands of residential institutions. It's a painful reminder of the horrors that occurred and of what was lost. It's also a day of cherishing what is being regained. I recently had the privilege of visiting Getgiman Wolastoqey Language Immersion School. Children attending this land-based and experiential learning center are little busy bees. They are connecting to their culture, relearning their language, and maintaining a healthy relationship with Mother Earth through nature. It's truly beautiful and heartwarming to witness. It's healing in action. Language is key to one's identity, and these children will grow up being loud and proud of every aspect of who they are, a feeling that their ancestors were violently robbed of. I want to say a special shout out to the founder and staff at Getgiman, and I want to celebrate the children who recently received their traditional names, notably Benson, Wapspe, Polar Bear, the son of Rachel, who is one of my team members. I also wish to tell my own two Wolastoqey boys that I am so grateful to be their mom and to witness them grow up. You are my motivation and the reason why I am here, to fight and create a better world for you. Gizelmo and Wiliwen.
The Honourable Member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In July, we lost one of the pillars of the Oakville community. John Marlott, owner of the iconic Moonshine Cafe, passed away after a brief illness. John and his wife Jane opened the Moonshine Cafe over 17 years ago and created a unique live music venue where artists were supported and the public was always entertained. The president of the Treasury Board and I were very lucky to get to know him over the years. I have many fond memories of fun nights at the Moonshine. John hosted a music night before the 2010 municipal election where candidates like myself were invited to sing with Phil Kane on stage. There was a celebration of his life on Monday in Oakville. He had a heart of gold and he will be missed by all, but none more than Jane and his family. John, I have no doubt you're playing your guitar and singing your songs in heaven.
Interesting.
Honourable member for Kildonan, St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker,
Hey, Rico.
seniors are struggling to afford food, rent, and basic necessities. Over 1/3 don't have sufficient income.
Hey, she's glowing, eh?
And we know
She looks great.
1.5 million Canadians are going to food banks each month. After 8 years of the Liberal government's reckless spending, resulting in record high inflation and rising interest rates, many Canadians are falling further and further behind. But my community is taking action. Good Neighbours Active Living Centre in Winnipeg opened the Supports to Seniors Food Pantry program for seniors struggling with food insecurity. Neighbour helping neighbour is what Canada is all about, Mr. Speaker, and I know that this program will make a positive difference in the lives of many, many seniors. Fighting inflation and lowering the cost of living is the Conservative Party's #1 priority. We will return to balanced budgets and stop throwing fuel on the inflationary fire. The golden years of Canada's seniors should be filled with dignity and financial security, not food banks. And Conservatives, we will make that happen. Thank you.
Well said.
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Tuesday was World Contraception Day, and as access to sexual and reproductive services come under attack globally, more voices are calling for the right to universal free contraception. My province of BC set an example this April by implementing the policy. It's for all of Canada to follow suit. Preventing an unwanted pregnancy is vital to reproductive health and gender equality. It empowers individuals, especially women. It ensures that cost is not a barrier to low-income Canadians, especially adolescents. It reduces unintended pregnancies and promotes responsible family planning. I urge all parliamentarians to support universal free contraception. Make contraception a fundamental right and not a privilege. Ensure a healthier and more equitable future for all Canadians.
This is so bizarre.
For Mission, Masque, Fraser Canyon.
Bravo. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend I was honored to attend Agassiz Fall Fair and Corn Fest. Congratulations to Mr. Vanderwyck on being crowned this year's Corn King. As many farmers shared, this NDP Liberal government is attacking one of the primary tools to produce quality food in Canada, fertilizer. The NDP Liberal government recently outlined an unscientific plan to drastically reduce fertilizer usage by 2030. Canadian farmers already outperform the entire world on sustainability. In fact, they are up to 70% more efficient in fertilizer use. Rather than praising Canadian farmers as the global standard, they are insulting producers and the pocketbooks of every Canadian through higher costs at the grocery store. Food prices have already increased more than 10% over last year. To all the farmers across Canada, please know a future Conservative government will stop the attack on fertilizer so you can continue to grow quality, sustainable, local, homegrown food. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Beauce.
The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, families in riding and across the country are struggling to make ends meet.
We got over 1,600 people watching live, folks. Let's try and get 500 or 600 likes. So if you haven't yet, just look down and see if you've hit that like button. And if you haven't,
to a carbon tax,
smash it.
More expensive. Our farms, processing plants, and truckers have to bear this additional cost, which is then passed on to consumers. The Liberals and the Bloc want this tax increased radically. Our common-sense Conservative approach is to scrap the carbon tax altogether to help families and farmers get by, using science to reduce emissions. With legislation like Bill C-234 and our opposition motion today, Conservatives will continue to stand up for Canadian farmers and families. Let's come together and get rid of the carbon tax so Canadians can feed themselves, house themselves, and bring home bigger paychecks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry announced the largest private investment in the history of Quebec. Swedish company Northvolt has chosen Quebec for its new battery manufacturing plant for electric vehicles. This project will create thousands of manufacturing jobs and once again demonstrates the enviable position of Canada and Quebec in particular in the battery industry. According to our energetic Minister of Innovation, the auto industry's electric shift is the opportunity of a generation. It also confirms that this industry is responding to our government's call to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Sherbrooke is taking its place in the battery sector and in the electrification of transportation. Calogy Solutions, Professor Jerome Claverie and his solid-state electrolyte battery, the Sherbrooke Transit Commission and its electric buses all support this new and growing industry. Congratulations on this ambitious project. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, the planet is burning, literally. We saw it this summer in Quebec, BC, and all around the world. Here at home, the oil and gas sector is responsible for 30% of all our carbon emissions, and they're going up every year. That's why we absolutely need a hard cap on GHG emissions from this industry. The Liberals promised it in 2021, but we're still waiting. And we're waiting with bated breath for the regulations. The time for half measures is over. The Minister of the Environment must not present a plan chock full of loopholes, exemptions, or delays. New Democrats will not accept a wishy-washy system with financial compensation for companies or no enforcement measures. Recess is over. A hard cap is essential if we're to meet our targets. We urge the Minister to take action. The NDP will work to protect our kids' future.
They sure want you thinking that.
Yet, Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago today, Quebec witnessed the death of Joyce Echaquan, a 37-year-old Atikamekw woman, married, mother of 7, loved, and irreplaceable. The shocking circumstances of her death brought to light the racism she experienced in hospital with terrible consequences. The shockwave raised awareness of the urgent need to combat this racism by ensuring cultural protections for Indigenous people within the institutions that are there to serve them. It's a matter of principle. It's even been called Joyce's principle in her memory. We still have a lot of work to do to make sure our laws, policies, and practices all live up to this principle. But we now have a name in mind to remind us of that duty. Justice for Joyce. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to express to her husband, Carole Dubé, her children, and the entire Manawan community our solidarity this evening as you gather to honor the memory of Joyce Echaquan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Flamborough-Glenbrook.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, rent is out of control. Today, a one-bedroom apartment is pushing $2,000 a month. When the Conservative leader was the housing
rent is
minister
brutal.
in the previous Conservative government, a one-bedroom apartment went for around $900 a month. After 8 years of these Liberals, Canadians are now paying out-of-control prices and rents. In Toronto, a single room in a shared apartment is going for $1,300. In Vancouver, a single room in a shared apartment is going for nearly $1,800. International students are living in homeless shelters and under bridges, with one Toronto shelter saying 1/3 of its residents are students. Refugees are sleeping in the streets. Tent cities are spanning the country. In fact, prisoners in Vancouver have asked for increased sentences to avoid Vancouver's housing hell. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He's added more to the national debt than all previous Prime Ministers combined, driving up inflation, forcing up rates and mortgages, which in turn drives up rent.
The Honourable Member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. September 30th is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. This day of reflection and remembrance is an opportunity to walk together with Indigenous peoples towards healing and reconciliation in Canada. We must begin by acknowledging the painful history that has brought us to where we are today. For centuries, Indigenous peoples endured colonialization, the residential school system, the loss of their land, their language, and their culture. It's a history we must continue to confront head-on. unlike the combative and aggressive words used by the leader of the Conservatives when he said, and I quote, "Canada's Aboriginals need to learn the value of hard work more than they need compensation for the abuse suffered in residential schools." That is the cold, harsh views that have set back progress of Indigenous peoples for generations. We must never forget that the atrocities of residential schools and the generational trauma that still lingers in this country. Let us stand united in our commitment to truth, to reconciliation, and to a better Canada for all people, Mr. Speaker.
Let's get on with the show.
Oral
Questions que se ahogar. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is seen as a clown around the world at the moment.
Yeah, he is.
Whether you blame the former Liberal Speaker of the House for having recognized a former Nazi in Parliament, or whether you don't, well, either way, it took 5 days for the Prime Minister to stop hiding and avoiding his responsibility to defend Canada's reputation.
But whether you blame him or the Liberal Speaker for recognizing a Nazi on the floor of the House of Commons, we all agree that it took him 5 days while he hid under a rock and let our reputation be torn to tatters.
Wow.
Why was he more concerned about protecting his personal reputation rather than defending the nation's?
Wow. Right out the gate.
Honorable Leader en Chambre du Gouvernement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, he's hiding behind a pregnant woman again.
Parliament actually recognized that it was the Speaker's responsibility. That's why they called upon him to resign, and that's why he did resign. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
And for 5 days, the Prime Minister was in hiding. And he's in hiding from answering my questions today about the people who are starving. We've got 7 million Canadians who are not eating enough because of the price of food. 1.5 million going to food banks. Food banks across this country have lineups that go around the street, never before seen. The middle class hungry is the new phenomenon the Prime Minister has brought us after 8 years in power. His solution? A radical quadrupling of the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre on the farmers and truckers who bring us our food. Will he finally adopt the Conservative common sense plan to axe the tax to bring home affordable food?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to put the question to the opposition as to whether they will actually support Bill C-56, which is before the House, and instead of voting against every measure that goes to support Canadians, whether it is senior citizens, whether it is workers, whether it is small businesses, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have a choice, and we urge them to vote in favour of Bill C-56. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
We've made our choice. We will axe the tax to bring home.
His hair looks pretty good today.
Interestingly, Liberal members of Parliament from Atlantic Canada tell their constituents that they agree with me and not with the Prime Minister. When they're on the home front, they tell their constituents that they're on the Conservatives team to axe the carbon tax. But when they come here, they seem to forget their spinal cords at home and the Prime Minister to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre, which also applies to home heating. Will these Atlantic MPs find a spine, vote with us, axe the tax to bring home lower prices?
Clark Kent is right.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, residents of Edmonton Centre, indeed Albertans across the province, wrote to me about the fact that this summer, Mr. Speaker, like so many summers before, and going back, Mr. Speaker, they couldn't breathe the air this summer because of forest fires, Mr. Speaker. And what do the Conservatives want to do, Mr. Speaker? They want to cancel the child care benefit. They want to pull the CCB. They want to chop, chop, chop. This is the party of slash and burn. They're going to slash programs and let the planet burn. Shame on them.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
We're going to chop the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, buddy. Axe the tax.
Member, just like his NDP coalition partners have betrayed Albertans. Albertans who are ripped off by this carbon tax, just like people right across the country. That member, just like the NDP, decided to betray his constituents and vote for the Prime Minister's plan to dig deeper in the pockets of hardworking people. Will they abandon their reckless plan to quadruple the tax to 61 cents a litre and vote for our motion to do it next week?
The Honourable Minister.
I'll tell you what's reckless is the Conservative ideology that somehow pausing renewable projects is a good strategy. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you people in my riding and in our province want us to lean in. They want clean electricity. They want reasonable electricity. They want hydrogen plants. Mr. Speaker, they want to be part of the economy of the future. These guys want to slash and burn. Shame on them. We're here to deliver for Albertans and for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, aujourd'hui, le chef...
Mr. Speaker, today the leader of the bloc lost it because we highlighted the fact that on June 5th he voted to implement the second carbon tax, which applies to Quebec. He lost it because we mentioned the fact that one of his members, and I'm quoting, wants to radically increase the carbon tax on the backs of Quebecers. And I think he's going to lose it again in a few moments. I'm sure of it. Will the Prime Minister keep working with the leader of the Bloc Québécois and keep increasing taxes on the backs of Canadians?
Oh my God.
What Quebecers know is that in 2023, it makes no sense that a party that aspires to govern the country has no plan to fight climate change. The only proposal that the Conservatives have is to cut programs that help people make ends meet and to make polluting free once again, even though we just went through our worst wildfire season. It's irresponsible. And that is a choice we'll never make, to risk the future of the country on the Conservatives. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The leader of the Official Opposition used the word clown earlier. That's interesting. Why wouldn't he decide to axe subsidies to oil companies? But all right, we have at least a year left before them, so we should instead consider last Friday's saga again. No call to President Zelensky or to the Jewish community or veterans from Quebec and Canada who fought the Nazis. Does this government recognize the terrible effects of the Prime Minister's negligence, and what will it do to correct that? The Honourable House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, calls were made, and it's very clear that everyone in this House was very upset by what happened on Friday. That everyone was wounded by what happened. The Prime Minister apologized to the Canadian people and to every community that was harmed by what happened on Friday. We will continue to do so, because it was something that was really harmful for everyone in this House and also for Canada. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Inaudible for the interpreter.
Inaudible for the interpreter? What?
Well, that doesn't mean much if the appropriate actions aren't taken. Meanwhile, because 5 days were spent without anything being done, Russian, Indian, and Chinese propaganda, none of those being friends of the government or Canada, of course, well, all of them were able to strongly act against Canada's global reputation, and unfortunately Quebec as well. Things wouldn't have been as bad if, as the leader, the Prime Minister had immediately come out and apologized. The headlines would have been quite different. What will the government do to stop embarrassing its allies and allow us to finally move on? The Honourable Government House Leader. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. As soon as we learned about this unfortunate event in this House last Friday, the Prime Minister recognized that it was something that was very painful for Canadians and for affected communities. Calls were made. Apologies were made. Through diplomatic channels, right from the beginning, Mr. Speaker, and Canada will continue to work with its allies to defend Ukraine and work with them for justice and sovereignty.
It's always about Ukraine.
For Rosemont Petrie. Mr. Speaker, this summer...
Oh, even Jagmeet's not here today.
Raged in our rural regions, we are seeing the climate crisis, and the inaction of the Minister of the Environment is becoming shameful. There was a recent report by the International Energy Agency. It states that Canada should stop approving new fossil fuel projects and move our net zero goal forward to 2045. But the Liberals are doing exactly the opposite. They bought a pipeline. And this Minister of the Environment has said yes to the Baie-du-Nord project. Will this minister finally wake up and listen to the agency's recommendations? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, like our colleague, our government is concerned about the future of the planet. That's why, since 2019, we reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 62 megatons. That's the equivalent of 11 million cars off the roll, and we will continue fighting the climate crisis, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member. Well, I'm sorry, but the Liberals are asleep at the switch on the climate change. And now, regarding the transfer to a new insurer for the public service is causing all sorts of problems for employees who are already struggling due to the cost of living. There are all sorts of delays to get their money back. Some claims are being rejected even for sick children, and it's almost impossible to talk to someone about it because no one answers the phone. Workers deserve better, but the Liberals are leaving them to cool their heels. What is the Liberals' plans to fix the chaos they caused and help families that are suffering?
Monsieur le Président, j'apprécie beaucoup le...
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Notice how they don't have Freeland there right now because of the Nazi debacle and the ties for her grandfather, how he was a Nazi.
Everyone needs appropriate support to access their benefits. And we know that wait times at Canada Life call centers are unacceptable. And I have spoken with the leadership at Canada Life. I have told them the same thing, and we will work very hard to ensure that public servants can access their benefits.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, I listened carefully yesterday to the Prime Minister's apology in the House. He did not apologize
Here you go.
on behalf of the government or on behalf of Canada. He apologized on behalf of the House, but a Prime Minister does not speak for the House.
No.
A Prime Minister speaks for the government or for Canada. Yesterday in this House, he did not apologize on behalf of either for the embarrassment and shame of the government's mismanagement of an official state visit. Why?
Because he's a coward and wants to bring everyone down.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows perfectly well that the Prime Minister issued an apology on behalf of all of us, because those of us that were present here in this chamber on Friday all stood unbeknownst to any of us that this individual were to be here or that he would be recognized by the Speaker. I think all of us feel a deep shame about this, and had we known otherwise, not a single one of us would have stood and applauded this individual. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, for 5 days, the Prime Minister let Canada's reputation wither. For 5 days, the Prime Minister did not apologize. And when he did, it wasn't on behalf of the government or on behalf of Canada. It was on behalf of Parliament, for whom he does not speak. Why did he avoid speaking on behalf of himself, the government, or Canada?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member opposite knows perfectly well, as soon as this was discovered, the Prime Minister spoke about how deeply hurtful this was to all parliamentarians, indeed all Canadians, particularly all communities who were impacted by the Holocaust. Conversations and apologies were made through diplomatic channels immediately upon knowing about this. And as soon as the Speaker admitted his responsibility, took responsibility, the Prime Minister issued his apology. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, while Canada was undergoing the worst diplomatic crisis in its history, what did the Liberal Prime Minister give us? 5 days hiding under a rock 5 days when he did not even pick up the phone to call President Zelensky or the communities that were affected. 5 days during which the entire world was so upset about what happened here that the situation got out of hand and Canada lost a great deal of credibility. Why did it take 5 days for the member for Papineau to act like a prime minister, defend our reputation, our communities, our country?
Where is Trudeau? Like, he just ran away again to Auschwitz or something?
As members on the other side know very well, the Prime Minister, as soon as he recognized what had happened, he immediately said that it was something painful and shameful for Canada. Everyone in this House knows very well that it was the Speaker of the House who decided to invite that individual without letting any other member or the government or the Ukrainian delegation know that they were going to recognize that individual. He has taken responsibility, he has apologized, and he has stepped down.
Reminder to hit the like button, everyone, to try and get up to 1,000.
This morning, there was an incredibly long queue outside a food bank in Quebec. People can no longer put food on the table after 8 years of this Liberal government. The carbon tax is contributing a large proportion of this unacceptable situation because it applies to the production and transportation of what we buy at the grocery store. The Liberal Bloc is supporting this tax, which is sending people to food banks, and even worse, the Bloc Québécois wants to radically increase the carbon tax. There is a price when you vote for the Bloc, and everyone is realizing that. So, instead of just yelling and screaming in this House, will the Bloc Québécois finally show some compassion and vote for our motion to cancel the carbon taxes? Normally, one asks question of the government, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I would be happy to let the Bloc Québécois answer, but I will say that there are 35 Liberal Quebec members, all of whom stood by our Prime Minister and Minister to ensure that foreign investment will be made in Canada. And today, we announced that there is a new company, Norval, which is going to settle in Saint-Boniface in Quebec, which will contribute thousands of jobs to Quebec thanks to our government's hard work. That is the future. That's what it means to work hard for Quebec.
Forest Lawn. Anyone who took out a 5-year, $500,000 variable rate mortgage in 2021 is now paying up to $24,000 more in interest a year.
Oh my God, dude.
Telling everyone, borrow as much as you want. Interest rates will be low for a very long time.
Yeah, he lied to Canadians.
It was for her to pour hundreds of billions of dollars of fuel on the inflationary fire, giving them the most rapid interest rate hikes not seen in the last 3 decades. After 8 years of this incompetency, they're just not worth the cost anymore. When will the Prime Minister finally balance the budget so interest rates can come down and Canadians can keep a roof over their heads?
The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I find the honourable member's newfound interest in building more homes for Canadians fascinating when he's got a history of voting against measures that will build more homes for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I'd point out to the honourable member that officials at Finance Committee yesterday confirmed the Conservative proposal will build fewer homes than the measures we have introduced already. Why is the honourable member's plan to cut funding for home building and to raise taxes for home builders? It's not going to work. There are members who will work to build homes for Canadians, and they sit on the government side of the House.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
So the guy responsible for breaking immigration is now responsible for breaking housing even further in this country. I've built more homes than their government combined. That's right. So I would
Drop a W in the chat, folks.
It's gone up 43% since then to a whopping 4%. The interest rates went up because of their high deficits. When will they finally balance the budgets so Canadians don't lose their homes?
Damn.
In typical Conservative fashion, he's ignoring the homes that we built over the last number of years for low-income people. The reality is, when I look at the plans that they...
You got owned, Fraser. Where's the million people, bro?
I'm really having trouble hearing.
You lost 1 million people. Where are they?
It's fascinating, Mr. Speaker, when we make the point that things, all they have to do is yell. The reality is the plan they have put forward...
I bet you did not see that coming.
...that it is written on. Their plan is literally to cut funding to build homes and to raise taxes on the people who will build them. It will not work, Mr. Speaker. We are going to put measures forward that change the financial equation for builders. We are going to change the way that cities build homes, and we're going to build the workforce to get it done.
L'honorable député de Avignon-la-Métis, Matane-Matapédia.
Monsieur le Président, la semaine dernière.
The Honourable Member for Avignon-la-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, last week at the UN, Canada was reminded that it is a global leader in the expansion of fossil energy. As the Minister of the Environment likes to remind us, it is a major oil-producing country, and instead of defending themselves, the Liberals seem to be proud to prove that the UN is right. In fact, they currently are authorizing more exploration off Newfoundland, and they are going to double oil production. Oil companies and the Conservatives are delighted. Environmentalists are aghast. Clearly, the minister has chosen the side he's on, but does he realize that he's on the wrong side of history? Mr. Speaker, under the Conservatives, only 1% of our ocean territory was protected. But now we have protected more than 14%. We have created a number of policies based on international best practices, and we will be meeting our goals appropriately. We are recognizing, first of all, that biodiversity is important, and we will be working with the Bloc and the other parties to protect the environment and create jobs. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, it's not just the UN that is criticizing Canada's oil expansion. The former Liberal Minister of the Environment, Catherine McKenna, can now say what she thinks since she has left politics. And what she said in La Presse is that Canada will soon be the second biggest producer of new oil deposits in the entire world by 2050. And what she thinks is that it didn't have to be this way. And she is right, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals don't have to be part of the problem. Will they back down on their plan to engage in oil expansion off Newfoundland? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
We got to be doing more drilling, more oil.
Setting a threshold for oil and gas expansion is one of the major planks of our plan to reduce GHG emission. Oil companies have shown several times that they are perfectly capable of creating new competitive methods. We are continuing to work with all stakeholders in order to bring in measures to reduce emissions from oil and gas production. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government announced last week that it wants to double offshore oil production by 2030. Right in the middle of a biodiversity area. This might affect endangered species. And the Conservatives seem to be delighted. Go ahead, kill all the whales. No problem, as long as the oil continues to flow. It's shameful. It's a threat for the future and for the planet. This has been created by the Liberal government, and it's being applauded by the Conservatives. Will the government finally hear reason and cancel these irresponsible decisions? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. Protecting.
We're almost out of the French.
Priority.
It's going to switch back to English soon.
The developer will have to ensure that they are creating a plan to protect marine life. There have been extensive environmental assessments. The plan was examined and approved by experts from Fisheries and Oceans. Production project proposed in a protected marine area. And
is that China, India, Russia, or the Jews?
Honourable Member for Cumberland.
Messing with the feed.
Mr. Speaker, what this Conservative team has been warning about for more than a year has become an awful reality. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government policies, my home province of Nova Scotia has been plunged into a failing grade, an F in fact, with respect to 13 indicators of poverty. Their punishing carbon tax has vaulted Atlantic Canadians past the point of being able to feed themselves, put a roof over their heads, and heat their homes. This Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister cancel his plans to increase his inflationary carbon tax?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, I have to point out that it's unacceptable that the member repeats the talking points from a recent $45,000 junket he joined where he enjoyed porterhouse steaks in Chateaubriand, where they ordered 10 bottles of $600 wine and champagne. Mr. Speaker, we're going to put forward measures that are going to protect the environment and put more money in the pockets of families. What the Conservatives are proposing is to take money from my constituents so they can make it free to pollute. In the era where our province has dealt with Hurricane Fiona, Hurricane Lee, wildfires like we've never seen, and floods that have taken loved ones from their families, it is completely unacceptable for a Nova Scotian to take that position.
Pay to pollute. Are we paying for air too?
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting. The outgoing member from
I'm just going to stand it. I know that the Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay really wants to ask another question, and maybe he can get on the schedule with the whip. But I know I'm trying to hear it over here, and I'm hearing lots of go back between here. So, well, I'm hearing a bunch. I'm hearing a bunch of everybody, but I'm hearing the member from Timmins.
Let's go, Speaker.
He's the one. The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's kind of rich. The outgoing member for Central Nova, failed Minister of Immigration, now failing Minister of Housing, over there doing some chest-thumping and back-slapping antics of the Atlantic Liberal members. Apparently, there's nothing but a charade and lacks a backbone. Voters know their carbon tax is increasing the price of home heating fuel, food, and housing, and that's serious business. They want Atlantic Canadians to believe that they're not in favor of the carbon tax, and yet they have voted for carbon tax measures more than 23 times since 2015. This Prime Minister and his acolytic Liberal Atlantic members of Parliament are not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister cancel his plans to increase the punishing and inflationary carbon tax?
That's a good question. The Honourable Minister of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague wants to take money from his constituents so he can make it free to pollute. This should come as no surprise because the Conservatives, over the course of my time in this chamber, want to cut or vote against programs that support ordinary people all the time. They want to take dental benefits away from children. They want to cancel investments in childcare. They vote against tax measures that cut taxes for the middle class and raise them on the 1%. We are going to protect middle-class Canadians. We are going to work to defend their pensions when the Conservatives lack the courage to do so.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
Here is NDP Liberal logic. We're going to increase the carbon tax on the farmers who grow the food, on the truckers who transport it,
and then it comes down on us,
and the retailers who sell it. But we're going to try to convince Canadians that these higher taxes don't impact the price of the food that you're buying at the grocery store shelves. No one believes you. No one believes you when 7 million Canadians have to access a food bank every single month. No one believes you when food bank use in Alberta is up 70%. Wow. No one believes you when the Calgary Food Bank supports 700 families every single day. This Prime Minister just isn't worth it. How many families have to rely on a food bank before the Liberals join the Conservatives and axe the carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's disgraceful how the Conservatives are using people's financial struggles and pain to reinforce inaction on the environment and climate change. Canadians know how important it is to climate change. Know that on this point, the Conservatives have absolutely no credibility and no plan for affordability or to fight climate change. And when you don't have a plan for the environment, you don't have a plan for the economy. We have a plan to address both affordability and climate change. The Conservatives ran on a plan where there are no tool to put a price on carbon. They've spun on their heels with their new leader from Carleton because apparently climate change isn't a thing in that part of Ottawa.
Order. We were doing so well. The Honourable Member from London Fanshawe.
Prime Minister recently praised a shady corporate landlord named Dream Unlimited Management for building more housing in Toronto, where rent averages $2,600 a month for a one-bedroom. But what has Dream Unlimited done in Toronto? They've jacked up rent in their buildings by 22% in 5 years. How can this even be considered a solution? It's insulting. When will the Liberals stop leaving it to the big developers and start announcing measures to build social and co-op housing that will actually get us out of this housing crisis?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Housing.
My my honourable colleague has asked when the Liberal government is going to start investing in housing for low-income families. Right after we formed government in 2015 is the answer to her question. We have been putting forward a national housing strategy backed by $82 billion investment that is providing thousands upon thousands of homes for low-income families. But I would point out, Mr. Speaker, that the path going forward involves a mix of investments that will support homes for low-income families and for middle-class families. As a result of the removal of the GST on the construction of new apartments, we are seeing developers announce new projects. There are some that have announced 5,000, 3,000, 1,000. This is going to put a roof over the head of hundreds of thousands of Canadians.
The honourable member for London. Sorry, not again.
Oh, he keeps messing up.
Leader of the Conservative Party has made it very clear where he stands. He wants to cut Canadians' pensions and seniors get less money, and now they're applauding that plan. Now his friend, Miss Danielle Smith, is taking his lead and threatening to pull Alberta out of the CPP. Shameful. Albertans are worried that their pensions will be gambled away by unpredictable, unreliable Conservatives. When will this government get serious and defend the pensions of seniors?
The honourable.
You're not supposed to use a federal platform for provincial matters.
Really clear. I have emails today from Brett and Eva and Ryan, all seniors just in Edmonton Centre, and many emails beyond that, Mr. Speaker, imploring our government to make sure that the Premier of Alberta keeps her hands off of Albertans' pensions that are in the CPP. And I can tell you one thing, Mr. Speaker, just on performance alone, a few years back, CPP 20%, AIMCO 0.5%. The math speaks for itself. Pensioners need their pensions. This is not the time to play politics with pensions. It's simply not worth it.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding and across this country, companies are in a race to deploy cutting-edge technologies that deliver the energy we need while driving down emissions and costs. This is a win-win-win because Albertan workers are using their expertise to build projects that deploy green, affordable and reliable energy to households, and the Government of Canada is investing in them. Can the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages please update this House on recent developments in the energy sector?
Well, Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for Calgary Skyview for the incredible work that over 100,000 homes and giving thousands.
What's going on?
Today, Mr. Speaker, we announced nearly $24 million for Cypress 2 wind farm in Alberta. This project with EDF Renewables and the Kainai First Nation will reduce emissions equivalent to 20,000 cars off the road. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives want to chop, chop, chop and block projects, we're delivering for Albertans.
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, former Bank of Canada Governor David Dodge said the burden of past debts are catching up with us and governments cannot spend their way out of problems. Except the issue for this government is every problem that they see, the solution is to spend more money. And everybody now knows that when the government spends money, the Bank of Canada raises its interest rates. When the Bank of Canada raises its interest rates, Canadian mortgage holders pay more. So will the government finally rein in its out-of-control deficits so Canadians can keep their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from the Finance Committee for his question. As he well knows, all of the rating agencies have reconfirmed our AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. But what I would like to address is the fact that the Conservative members are oddly silent when it comes to investments that our government has made in order to attract companies like Northvolt, which just announced today, Mr. Speaker, that it is coming to Canada. It could have gone to California. It could have gone to anywhere else around the world, but it has decided to partner with our federal government in order to install a brand new company right here in Canada. That will create thousands of jobs for Canadians who need them. That is us working for Canadians.
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, while households are struggling with higher mortgage and interest costs, the Canadian taxpayer is going to get sideswiped. That's because this year the government has to borrow over $420 billion just to satisfy their spending and deficits. It also expected to pay almost $44 billion in servicing the debt. Except that assumes
down by the end of this year, except interest rates have gone up. So will the Minister of Finance stand up and tell Canadians how much taxpayers are on the hook because interest rates haven't come down by the end of this year, except interest rates have gone up. So will the Minister of Finance stand up and tell Canadians...
I don't know what's happening with the feed, folks.
Because interest rates haven't come down.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I spoke with a mother in my riding who is wondering how much a Conservative government would cost.
Thanks for the bless you in the chat.
Our government has been supporting
oh, shit. Thank you.
through this difficult time.
There we go. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. You can start again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, I've hit a nerve with the Conservatives here because when I spoke to a member of my constituency, when I spoke to this mother, she was concerned.
I must be allergic to all of this bullshit.
The Conservatives' plan would cost her. You see, she is relying on the Canada Child Benefit, which continues to go up because it is indexed to inflation. She is relying on the supports of our government. She is relying on the construction of new homes that our government is committed to build. And this Conservative Party is nowhere to be found.
No plan. The Honourable Member for Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of the NDP Liberal government, inflationary spending is driving up the cost of living and interest rates to the point where people are worried that they might lose their home. The more this government spends, the more inflation grows and the higher interest rates get. Now with mortgage interest costs up 31%, it is clear, Mr. Speaker, that this government, that this Prime Minister, is not worth the cost. So when will
we're screwed?
Control and put an end to their out-of-control spending so that Canadians can keep a roof over their heads?
Yeah, so Canadians can buy a roof for their heads. Holy smokes, man.
The member is concerned about making sure Canadians have a roof over their head. I find it curious that he seems to be supporting a plan that has been described as being so unaware of the scale or urgency of the housing crisis that it's come up with measures such as a snitch line to rat out your neighbors. He's put forward measures.
This guy talking, Sean Fraser, lost 1 million people when he was immigration minister
Build homes. That
last year.
More homes. He's proposing a plan that's going to result in cuts to the funding that is supporting home building. We are going to change the financial equation for builders by putting incentives forward. We are going to change the way that cities build homes, and we're going to continue to make investments so that the most vulnerable people in our communities do have a roof over their head. There is one party in this House who is committed to building homes for low-income families and for the middle class, and we are right here.
The Honourable Member for Kenora.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister talks about the urgency of addressing a crisis that him and his government has created. It's not just homeowners who are struggling.
Create the problem, sell the solution.
Young adults have given up completely on their dream of home ownership. In Toronto, students are paying $1,500 a month for one bedroom. Not a one-bedroom apartment, Mr. Speaker, but one individual bedroom within a shared apartment has caused to stop their out-of-control spending so that Canadians can afford a home.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
The Nazis are messing with the feed, folks.
Affordability is our top priority, and I'll give another example here to the member. In my constituents, Danielle and Hélène Gingras from my riding of Nickel Belt, Northern Ontario, took advantage of the Greener Homes program to help cover the cost of the installation, and they're now saving hundreds of dollars a month on their energy bill, while at the same time reducing emissions. Addressing affordability and fighting climate change go hand in hand. Canadians know that the leader of the
rebates are like $35 a month or some shit. Doesn't make any sense.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, where is the $900 million that is owed to Quebec for housing? There's no Liberal trick or distraction that will make us forget about this. Mr. Speaker, I've been all over Quebec and there are needs everywhere, not just in Montreal. In Saint-Anne-des-Monts, people talk to me about homelessness. They'd never seen anything like it. In Saint-Jérôme, there are 40 households living in their cars. Across Quebec, there are families without a roof over their heads. Meanwhile, the federal government is depriving Quebecers of $900 million for housing. When will they release the money to Quebec? Without conditions. The Honourable Housing Minister. Mr. Speaker, as the member knows full well, we are in talks with Quebec to establish a new agreement to support Quebec in building housing across the province. Mr. Speaker, I've had many conversations with my counterpart to determine our shared priorities. Mr. Speaker, reaching an agreement between Quebec and Canada is good for Quebec and Canada.
Where's the million people, Sean?
Mr. Speaker, if the Liberals' priority was to house people, they would have transferred the housing money to Quebec a long time ago. But by withholding the money, what they're showing is that their priority is not building housing as quickly as possible, but rather starting flag fights with Quebec. Mr. Speaker, they should start by giving us the means to build buildings. But they need not worry. We will invite them for all photo ops. We'd be delighted to. When will they transfer to Quebec the $900 million for housing? Because it's urgent. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for his question. As he knows, we work very well with Quebec. We have reached many agreements with Quebec, and we have made historic investments in housing in Quebec. We're very happy.
The only way to fix housing is if they start pumping out
more announcements.
500,000 to 1 million houses across the country per year.
And we're excited to announce them, Mr. Speaker.
In my non-expert opinion.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a recent survey found that 1 in 2 young people live paycheck to paycheck. Also, Mr. Speaker, 8 out of 10 young people say that they cannot afford to buy a home. That's where 8 years of this Liberal government has gotten us. And the Bloc Québécois is colluding with the Liberals, who want to increase the carbon tax, which will drive up the cost of everything we consume, Mr. Speaker. It's clearly, definitely expensive to vote for the Bloc. When will the Liberals put an end to their inflationary policies so that Canadians can keep a roof over their heads? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've had a housing policy for years, and we have invested billions in that policy. We work with the Government of Quebec. We have many different types of programs for all categories of housing, be it affordable housing. We also have our measure to eliminate GST for rental housing construction. We make it possible for young people to invest and save taxes to be able to invest in their first home, their first property. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Liberal Coalition wants to drastically increase the carbon taxes. That means it's expensive to vote for the Bloc, especially since the Bloc leader has no idea how much gas the average family of 4 in Quebec uses every year. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Liberal Coalition doesn't understand the suffering of Canadian families. When will the government get some common sense and cancel the carbon taxes? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quebec is not subject to carbon pricing, for the one simple reason that for 10 years, Quebec has had a carbon market. So my colleague doesn't understand that the impact of climate change impacts our businesses. And if we priced pollution the way Conservatives wanted to, then Quebec and British Columbia's companies would be disadvantaged compared to other companies in Canada. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, carbon taxes are increasing the cost of living for Canadians as well as the cost of living for our farmers, as if 8 years of Liberal incompetence weren't costly enough. And now the new Bloc Liberal Coalition is adding to the cost. It's an outrage. Mr. Speaker, it's expensive to vote for the Bloc. They are drastically increasing the carbon taxes. They are hurting our farmers even more.
It's kind of brutal how much French they're doing.
Finally show some common sense. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Mr. Speaker, common sense is like jam. The more you have, the more you spread it. But they would cut.
It looks like she knows a thing or two about jam.
For families, they would cut support for women, and I could go on all afternoon. Chop, chop, chop. All they do is chop and cut. That's their version of common sense, and we don't want that common sense, Mr. Speaker.
She looks so crazy. Oh.
The Honourable Member for Dorval.
Holy smokes.
Mr. Speaker, in communities across Quebec and Canada, and in my riding of Dorval, Lachine, La Salle, Many businesses are having trouble finding the workers that they need. Can the Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship inform this House of our government's plan to bring in newcomers who have the skills that are in high demand in order to stimulate innovation and economic growth? Thank you very much. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a top destination of choice for skilled immigrants. Immigration is a key ingredient of our solution to labor shortages. We have programs for temporary foreign workers and foreign students. We are also
This guy looks undernourished. He should talk to the jam lady.
To boost economic growth. We will continue to use all the tools at our disposal in our toolbox to address labor shortages because that's good for economy and our country.
29th, the Liberal NDP coalition
Let's go, genius.
the Conservative motion to sue the companies responsible for the opioid crisis for all damages and devote the money received to prevention, treatment and recovery. Liberals sided with McKinsey and Big Pharma against the victims of the opioid crisis. McKinsey just agreed to pay another $230 million in damages in the U.S. While American victims are collecting big time from these corporate drug dealers, why did this government vote against bringing home full compensation for victims here in Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it seems, as usual, the opposition is behind the times and is offering nothing when we address this critical issue. Thankfully, we have other members of the House who do. And we'd invite them to work with us rather than promoting the fear and stigma that they continue to do. But we've been working with BC since 2018 on litigation against Big Pharma and those who enabled them. And we're part of the Purdue settlement in 2022. At the government's request, BC also amended their legislation to reinforce the federal government's participation in these class actions. Get on board and get up to speed.
That comment's funny. You guys think Anthony Rhoda's watching the live stream?
Make sure we speak directly to the chair when we do that.
That's funny to think about. I did not see that coming.
Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, we're talking about children deaths here, so the NDP members can heckle me all they want. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, fatal overdoses from opioids and other illicit drugs are now the leading cause in the deaths of children aged 10 to 18 years. It's actually the NDP who should be ashamed of themselves because these kids had their lives ahead of them, and this costly coalition's insistence on decriminalization meant that these kids' lives are cut short. It is shameful that this NDP Liberal government, their radical agenda, when will they keep our kids safe?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, on International Overdose Awareness Day, I was in Barrie this summer and spoke to the mother of Christine Naylor, the mother of Ryan, who said harm reduction is health care, Mr. Speaker. We are saving lives. The member perfectly knows that safe supply is highly regulated and that diversion of supply agreement is illegal in this
No Canadian taxpayer wants to be funding drugs to drug addicts.
To reverse the tide of the overdose crisis, and I suggest that the member work with us rather than re-stigmatizing and putting people in the shadows instead of getting them the help they need.
No one agrees with that.
The Honourable Member of South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you.
Penny Boudreau choked her 12-year-old daughter to death in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. She claimed Carissa had run away.
Wait, what?
But when Carissa's body was found, Penny was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. This child murderer has been granted another pass to leave prison.
No.
Carissa will never live her life, but her murderer is free to live hers. Can the Liberals tell my community where the justice is in this?
The Honourable Parliamentary.
That threw me off guard, man. That's bringing a tear to my eye.
Mr. Speaker, crimes like this are truly
Holy shit.
horrific, and I think it's important to remember that in this place, that it is our job and our duty to all Canadians to ensure a criminal justice system that is robust, but, Mr. Speaker, that is not partisan, that members opposite do not use heinous crimes in a way that it is for partisan gain.
Shut up. It's your fault. The bail system is where it is.
Public Safety Committee when it comes to ensuring a victims' rights focus. But, Mr. Speaker, we won't play games with public justice system. Instead, we're going to make it safe for all Canadians.
The honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt.
I didn't see that sticky note on my coffee.
Constituents in Scarborough, Agincourt, Armenian Canadians, and those across the country have been expressing their concerns over the devastating situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. After spending almost a year without fuel, food, and medicine due to the blockade of the Lashin corridor, there is now an exodus of Armenian refugees due to the resumption of military activity by Azerbaijan in violation of the 2020 ceasefire agreement. Can the Minister of International Development please outline what measures the Government of Canada is taking to respond to this situation?
Minister of International Development.
Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for Scarborough Agincourt for her strong advocacy on this issue. We've been following as a government the deteriorating situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. This is a situation that also impacts Armenian Canadians. And earlier this morning, I announced that Canada is providing $2.5 million to the Red Cross to provide food, emergency health care, protection services, and other essential life-saving assistance to more than 60,000 refugees caught in Nagorno-Karabakh and the surrounding regions. We continue to call on Azerbaijan to respect the ceasefire, ensure humanitarian access, and protect civilians, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre. No.
Come on, dude.
Audio's working.
Like, figure out your comms.
Mute there. One more.
She did not see that coming.
Let's get another sec. All right, what I'll do is I'll go to the next one, and then we'll see if we can come back. So I know this is not going to give us a whole lot of time to get that figured out. The honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, while climate-fueled
Green Party
fires burned over 175,000 square kilometers across the country this year, oil and gas companies are gouging Canadians at the pumps and raking in record-breaking profits. The Liberals have already imposed a windfall profit tax on banks and life insurance companies. Greens have put forward a motion to apply this same tax to the oil and gas industry to help fund proven climate solutions. Will the minister commit to this responsible, reasonable measure and tax those most responsible for the crisis?
He buys slave labor clothes. His glasses are likely made from China. He drives a car.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Everything that Green Party uses is funded through oil, is the backbone.
Program for
it's just hypocritical.
Since then, we've continued to
partisanship.
Eliminate inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that are encouraging smart government investment, because that's going to increase Canada's global competitiveness. Government investment, because that's going to increase Canada's global...
I don't know what's going on with the feed.
In Budget 2023, Mr. Speaker, our government also announced our $120 billion clean economy plan to grow Canada's clean economy, to create good-paying jobs and careers for workers right across Canada, Mr. Speaker. Phasing out fossil fuel subsidies in our country will ensure government programs and spending support the energy sector, and they're aligned with our ambitious climate goals. Thank you very much.
That should be it for question period.
Questions and comments? The honourable... Oh, sorry. It's been a long week, folks. The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Oh, there's another one.
No. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
And the little chihuahua in the back.
Yeah, is that the 5 big oil companies are now being sued for active disinformation on the climate crisis, on false promoting of both natural gas and petroleum as a solution. What we see is the big tobacco moment, where they are now being held accountable for the disinformation, of course, which is supported by the Conservatives.
He looks like he sleeps with his eyes open.
I'm asking this government, are they considering going after big oil for disinformation disinformation like the state of California, holding them accountable and making them pay for the massive damage that they've done to our forests, our communities, and our children's future.
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
On a day where we're confronted with climate change denial and actions to bring us back to a Harper era where he called the Kyoto Accord a socialist regime, it's actually heartening to hear from members in this House who are following through on their commitments from the last election where we all ran on a commitment to price carbon, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the question from my colleague opposite. I'll look into the issue and we'll have a conversation offline. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
That's it.
And that's all the time we have for question period.
Oh mon dieu, on the contraire, mon frère. Well, that was pretty good. It's unfortunate that Justin Trudeau is hiding like the little wuss that he is. Maybe he's going to visit Auschwitz. Who knows what that cokehead is up to. Wait, did I just call him a cokehead? No, that's Zelensky. Who knows? Anyways, that's where we're going to end today's stream. Just a reminder, if you want to get some I Did Not See That Coming stickers, link for that is down in the description, as well as the pinned comment on the live stream. Thank you so much for everybody who has supported the channel through getting these stickers. Even if you don't want to support the channel, even if you just want these stickers, thank you so much. It's been an overwhelming amount of support and orders for these stickers. My wife and I are going to be so busy this weekend fulfilling all of those shipments and shipping everything out. Everyone should receive their stickers by next weekend at the very latest. That's where we're going to end the stream. Thanks everyone for the super chats. We just crossed 50,000 subscribers. Thanks everyone for subscribing. I'd like to thank my mother. I'd like to thank my father. I'd like to thank God. I'd like to thank Jesus. More importantly, I'd like to thank all of you viewers for sticking around and for watching this clown show of a circus with me. I like to think that I add a little bit of value through commentary and through entertainment and through reactions. I just love it. I absolutely love it. And I have a supporting wife to help me pull this off, such as getting a cup of coffee for me delivered that with a sticker that says, I don't know if you can read it, but it says, I love you. I had no idea until I drank it and I saw it in the camera. So W in the chat for my wife, and same time, tomorrow, Friday. Tomorrow's earlier, so I will see you earlier tomorrow, and stick around for the videos throughout the day. And I'd actually encourage you to go over to Mistersunshinebaby. I got some videos popping off there very shortly. Peace and love, everybody. Thanks a lot. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.